Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alien vs. Predator Galaxy podcast, the OG Alien and Predator podcast. This is regular host Aaron Percival, aka Corporal Hicks, and joining me is one of my fellow space. Oh, I was going to say space communists, but I mean that's a little basic of a term for the UPP there. But
Hello, cog in
space
the machine.
socialist, yeah, or gear in the machine is the correct.
Oh, I see.
Term for one of the later shorts, but his usual co-host
Adam Zeller, aka RidgeTop.
and one of our other regular hosts,
Greg, also known as Still Collating.
and joining us for her third or fourth, third or fourth appearance on the podcast is one of our favorite community supporters and community guests. Welcome,
Sarah. I would come up with some pithy, also known as, but I haven't found a good enough bishop one yet.
You have like 3 or 4 different friggin' aliases that confuse me every single time.
Clouds Burst. Let's go with that.
That's a good one.
Okay. What's that one from?
No, I just made that one up.
Fair enough. Okay.
There you go.
Sounds like a British thing to say when you're walking outside and you see the fucking piss storm that's about to come down on you.
True.
Anyway, we are here today to talk about what I think to be a shining jewel in Marvel's crown of alien stuff, which is Alien Black, White, and Blood, which is their, I was going to say first anthology series, but it's not like Marvel. It's not like Dark Horse really did particularly any anthology series anyway. But yes, Black, White, and Blood, a 4-issue Alien anthology that follows in the vein of a handful of other Black, White, and something anthologies that Marvel have done with a bunch of their more violence-inclined characters over the years. Characters like Wolverine and Deadpool, and even Darth Maul and Darth Vader. And Spider-Man's apparently getting one, or has got one as of the recording. Black suit and something. It's something like that. It's a spin on the the symbiote suit. But no, Marvel do like the Black, White, and Blood things, and I really, really fucking enjoy this run. I don't know about you guys. I mean, what's your guys' overall impressions of the series? Adam, you start us off. So
I think it was solid. I don't know if I'd put it quite as high as you did there. It is interesting in that it's an anthology. I mean, we'll get to Utopia, which is kind of the main focus of it, because Utopia is the only story which is kind of a full arc spread out through this anthology. So each issue has a story of Utopia, and the rest of the stories are all their own unique condensed stories, and they're quite short, honestly, for an anthology. They are very quick. Some are only like 2 pages, and that's it. Yeah, the one.
no, don't lie.
No, the first day, that's like 2,
That's
maybe
not
3
2
pages. I
You
don't know.
get
It's
fucked
short.
with you, is it?
It's
That's like
pretty
That's
short.
like 6 or 8 pages, mate.
I'm gonna look right now because
Go count it. You fucking liar. Go count
Okay.
it.
So, first day is 1,
Thrilling podcasting.
4. Okay, it's 5 pages. I'm sorry, but it's short. All right. So, they are shorter stories. Some are a little bit longer. For the most part, they were pretty solid. The artwork is different for all the different stories, and
There's different creative team on each.
Yeah,
each short.
yeah. As per usual, I have some issues with the artwork, the aliens in particular. But overall, I would say it's mostly solid. Definitely worth a read. Interesting how it comes in this big library edition, as we established it's called, rather than just a trade paperback.
They'll bring out a trade for it at some point.
A smaller one, you think so?
Yeah, a normal one, I imagine.
I do feel like the whole red, white, and blood thing is an interesting aesthetic. Initially I was kind of expecting this to
black,
be
white,
all. Black, white, and blood. Initially, I was expecting this to be all black and white with red accents and such, but it's not quite that contained with the colors.
Well, no, because Alien gives it a little bit of leeway in alien colored blood.
Yes.
So we get greens with it. It's very don't want to say charming. It's very smart about it. I think it's funny. I like it.
Yeah. But I mean, beyond just the blood, you have like green computer monitors and some other color accents.
Well,
and-
no, it's the palette. It's not so much as you are only seeing blood. It's that the palette that they are using is black, white, red, and green.
Gotcha. Okay. I get it now.
Only now, nearly a year after the series first released,
Has it really been that long? Man.
February 2024, I believe.
I think the covers have been really interesting. There have been some pretty solid ones, some others that I'm not so crazy about. So yeah, I don't know if I'd quite go as high as you sound like you're going with your score, Aaron, but it was decent. It was solid enough for me.
Sarah, how about yourself?
So you're probably no surprise to anyone that I've never read a comic in my life that isn't one of the Aliens ones. It's not my normal forte.
Did
So
you read Lance's comic?
yeah, but that was after I read the Aliens ones.
Okay, I'll let you off then.
I say that's adjacent.
Okay.
I wouldn't have read it had it not been Lance's
Lance.
association with it. Yeah. So for me, I'd never experienced kind of a month by month edition arriving on my door where it's a mixture of stories with different ways of telling the story, with different artwork, with different pacing. And I did struggle. I didn't expect it. I was wowed by Utopia, and then suddenly Utopia would stop, and I would be with a short story that kind of was associated, and it threw me out. It did on the first read, um, but I don't think that takes away from the strength of some of the short stories, and I don't think it takes anything away from Utopia itself. So, I think it was for me. My experience was it was a weird way to read it, but upon rereading, I read Utopia in total on its own, and then I read each of the shorts kind of over a couple of days with gaps in between, and that changed my experience of it as well. I enjoyed it much more doing it that way the second time round. So I'm a fan. A few of the short stories I think are weaker than the others, but you're getting 8 short stories with a four with one longer story in a 4 issue run. So I think what they actually achieved by trying to do that, I think, is impressive. So overall, I am a fan. After I got over my initial shock of how it was presented.
So out of interest there as well, Sarah,
Mhm,
anthologies in general,
mhm.
are you a fan of,
What, like Bug Hunt or something?
well, yeah, books, normal books?
Yeah, no, I struggle if when it's within one. Like, I will read one story, even if it's like Stephen King doesn't matter. I'll read one story and then suddenly I've lost the rhythm. It changes and I get a bit thrown out, so I have to have a rest,
So
and then before I can enjoy the next one.
Chris is the same. Chevy is the same. He just does not like anthologies. So yeah, okay. I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah,
But
I
no.
because I get, I mean, I remember when Hannibal came out, I queued outside Waterstones at midnight to turn around and get a copy, and then called in sick to work to finish it because I just sat there and read for like 8 hours. So I get really immersed, and I find I kind of get seasick by jumping from one to another, even if it's within the same genre. So it's a Sarah thing, but the way I revisited it was better for me.
Okay. Greg, go on then, buddy.
Well, I come from a completely opposite view in that sense. I'm I'm really a fan of anthologies in general, which I have only noticed really in these last few years that I've been enjoying when something is an anthology of separate episodic shorter forms more and more than longer forms, which can sometimes either drag out or uh, you feel like you've invested a lot of time into something that maybe doesn't pan out. But when you have this kind of collection of shorter bites, and then you just have an opportunity to see uh, a lot of different things, and even though some may not be the strongest, it's almost a statistical guarantee you're gonna like some of them. And I've noticed that I've been having a blast with anthologies. I even liked like half of the stories in Bug Hunt, even though it was Not it was a bit clumsy at the start, but then the Predator and Alien versus Predator novel anthologies, I really enjoyed them. So when we found out that there was going to be a comic anthology, Black, White, and Blood, I was excited for that, and my expectations have not only been met, but I've been surprised that they've decided to go with a format that gives you this story of Utopia that's stretched over the 4 issues, and then you get the shorter tales. I really enjoyed that combination of things, and we shall go into details later. But even though overall, maybe n- not every story is the most compelling, but I really do appreciate getting the chance uh, on every couple of pages, seeing just this snapshot idea of one author and an artist and a completely new style to see what do they have to offer, what do they have to say, and then you like it, you don't, uh, you just go on to the next story, and if you really like one of them, you then get this hope that you will see them more. We had an opportunity with the anthology in Bug Hunt, the novel anthology, where one of the writers, Scott Sigler, then later created a whole novel for it because it seemed to be a well received short in that book. So we shall see if any of the authors of the shorter stories in this comic anthology will continue to do something else. But I was generally very excited for it, and I really enjoyed it overall, and I hope we see more of those things in the future.
Thank you, everybody. So just to sort of finish off my thoughts there as well, I liked most of the stories in this book. There was 2 that I think were particularly, well, no, that's a lie. Sorry, there was 1 that I think was particularly weak. There was a couple that I thought were okay. Everything else I thought was generally pretty fucking good. And Utopia, I think, is probably some of Marvel's best. I genuinely do. So, how we're going to format this episode is we are going to discuss Utopia first. Then we're going to what I asked everybody to do was pick me a favorite and pick me a least favorite short from the run, and I've compiled them together. Naturally, that does not mean we're talking about 8 stories. We will be talking about 6 stories. So take from that as you will. There may be some crossover here. Actually, that's a lie. Sorry, we're not going to be talking 8 stories. We are going to be talking 6 stories. We're going to be talking 5 stories. So there is crossover there, but we'll get to that later. But yes, so we'll start with talking with Utopia, which is, has been said, forms the first bulk of each issue of the series, and it was written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing, and was drawn by Michael Dowling and coloured by Chris Sotomayor. Colin and Jackson are well known for, I believe, their work on Guardians of the Galaxy and Star Trek. Guardians, of course, for Marvel, Star Trek for IDW, I think, published those series. And it tells the tale of a UPP generational ship that is on its 1,000-year journey to some far off planet to escape all the capitalism and nihilism. I think they said was one of the people they were escaping. There were some other social groups on there as well, but they were trying to escape everybody and set up Utopia on this new world. Along the way, they discover a derelict Weyland-Yutani vessel that still has a ping of life sign on board, and being the wonderful socialist group that I'm not being sarcastic there, sorry, but being the socialist and democratic group that is the UPP, they voted unanimously to retrieve the Weyland-Yutani vessel because they are much better than the Weyland-Yutani folk. And shit went wrong because that life sign happened to be a Praetorian who wrecked shit up, established their own hive, And then I think over the course of about 500 years, we deal with the crew of, I forget the name of the ship. Greg, what was it?
The
Forward.
the main ship? Forward, yes.
Forward, yes. So about over 500 years, we get to deal with how generations aboard the Forward tried to deal with the alien and how it worked on the vessel and everything like that. That is my quick and dirty summary. Oh, you know what? I forgot to mention the most important fucking thing of it. Throughout those 500 years, throughout those generations, is a synthetic caretaker that serves very much as the narrator of the story, Siostra, and we view most of it through her frame, through her lensing, and yeah. Who wants to go first?
She was a really interesting character, the synthetic. She played a really big leadership role for the whole ship, which only increased as time went on.
She wasn't a
Initially,
leader, Adam. She
well, I
wasn't a
initially, yeah,
leader.
she was just the voice of the people, but eventually she decides their fate, and she's pretty much dictatorial over them. Eventually, when it gets to that, but yeah, at first she's not the leader. It is a completely democratic group. The ship is this really interesting design where it's this almost like a circular space station with a big engine on it, just going through space, and there's different sections of the ship that all have a democratic vote in any decisions that they make. And when they come across this first Praetorian, they are able to contain it to one of these sections, essentially dooming all the people in that section so they can contain it. And then we jump forward for, I think it's like 50 something years. And they've been able to contain it for that long, but the generations past feel guilty about letting that section of the ship die. So essentially, to atone for it, they wake up these soldiers that they've had on the ship, which that was kind of interesting because the UPP is a militaristic force, but I guess this splinter group wanted to get away from that, but they had these soldiers on board. So they're very hesitant to activate these soldiers to take on the xenomorphs. And they still decide to do it. And then we have these conversations between the synthetic character and this military leader where he assures her that he can handle the xenomorphs and that it won't be complete war across the whole ship. It does turn into complete war across the whole ship. And there's some elements of like fascism there in terms of the reception that the soldiers get when they're first awakened. Um, I mean, an overarching theme beyond Utopia, but in this whole series is space capitalism. Like Aliens always had that, of course, but it really goes into that. I would say through most of the stories here.
Well, it's not just the capital. It's not capitalism in this, really, is it? It's not what it's about. There's a great quote in Utopia. There's a great line in Utopia towards the end of the first part where Siostra says, so the Praetorians come on, we see everything go tits up, they all escape it, they close a bulkhead on it, and then they're trying to decide what they're going to do, and typically it would go to a vote of the entire society on the ship, and one of the guy goes
No time for that.
there's no time for that, and Siostra says 3 minutes. That's how long it took them to become dictators. And that is what Utopia ends up. I don't want to say ends up being, but it forms an important part of the thematic backbone of the story. Is this idea of mankind failing to live up to its ideologies? Adam mentioned the soldiers. He is a corporal who ends up then promoting himself to general, and that's how he's viewed, and he leads this failing campaign and becomes very much a dictator, a military dictator, and you see him celebrated like as such, as this giant political leader, this savior, and it just becomes, this entire story just becomes about the failings of mankind, and obviously spoilers, everybody. Obviously spoilers. We're
Yeah.
discussing, but it becomes about the failings of mankind and Siostra's realization of how imperfect we are as a society, regardless of whether we're fucking capitalists, whether we're socialists, whatever. Mankind fails to live up to its ideologies, and she recognizes aliens as the true society. The one without violence between each other. The important distinction there. Between each other and the ability to live up to a single goal and actually achieve that goal, that being the propagation of the alien species. And I've become a fucker for not noticing or not foreseeing these twists. But no, I did not expect it to end up being about her um, unleashing aliens on Paradise. Sorry, on Utopia.
Well, I mean, I agree with you that I didn't see it coming. But I think that one of the real strengths of this as a story run is that you kind of make the assumption that with people about at the beginning, I think she starts out, let me tell you a story, and you assume that she's talking about humans who have made it somewhere. And as
Oh,
the story goes on, they kind of
she
become
says that as well multiple times early on to sort of reinforce that idea as well that she's telling a story to somebody else.
yes, and you assume it's people, but then it actually turns out that it's not. That she was telling this to the alien hive that now has developed and is delivered to their utopia to run and frolic and play and be free. So for me, I thought that was. I think that I agree with you. I didn't see it coming, but I think that that was very clever how it did that.
Hmm.
And I think it lend itself to that kind of subterfuge to fool you into thinking it's going one way. And I thought that was really good. And to Adam's point earlier, I think that Siostra was such a well written character, and the fact that she's a facilitator, she's not making the decisions, she's kind of observing. I think it's 5 or 6 generations of um, of their group's history, and what do they evolve to? I think it lent itself to that. I thought that was very, very smart.
But she does end up having to step in and start making decisions once we see how poor we are at making our own decisions.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that that's uh, when I think the first time that she does that is when she decides that she's ominously taking control of the breeding program. I
No, before
winced.
that,
What
when
did
she
she do?
kills
I thought that
she
was
she
the.
kills the corporal, well,
I
the
didn't think
general.
it was clear that she killed him. I thought it was heavily suggested, and
I
that was
think
a great page,
It,
by the way. That was so good.
Mm.
yeah, I
it
mean,
was
heavily
yeah.
suggested, but they're having a private conversation. You can tell they're at an impasse, and the next page is him dead and her saying, like, spinning a lie about how he died. So, I mean, what else could have happened?
Well, that's
Greg,
It
how
had to
he
be her.
died.
Did Colin and Jackson tell us, confirm to us? I can't remember.
I don't remember if we've asked them that in our conversation. We were talking about it. I think that in passing, it would have been mentioned that yeah, she killed him and took control in that sense. I'm not completely sure, but I think it's possible in our interview that we have just went over that because I think it was so heavily implied there
Mhm.
that she had enough of
Yeah.
that. It was very unexpected that that ending of the second issue, we in Utopia, that final panel, that's gonna stay stay with me. I can just imagine her fists going through that skull.
Yeah.
Damn.
But Sarah as well, that whole taking control of the breeding thing, that is such a that was another one of those moments in it where I was like, "Fucking hell, things have really deteriorated this much." And somebody says something along the lines of, "What about for love or passion or whatever?" And Siostra's like, "Well, if you want to fucking continue as a viable people, tough shit. This is your only option."
Oh, yeah, because issue one is the ideal. Um, issue two is, in fact, you could say issue one is Alien, issue two is Aliens, because the first one is
Hmm?
ideals and the introduction. The second issue is all-out war in which they just lose and lose. Well, yes, they lose and lose and lose. What I did think was interesting, and I wasn't sure whether anyone had picked up on, is that the general that they awaken, his name literally means money. So it's Kian. And it's also the name of the people's scientist. So it was a Chinese gentleman who lived in the US, and he got deported, believed to be a spy, and built the Chinese missiles and defense network, which I thought was interesting as a name
Yeah,
to choose.
yeah.
And then Alien 3 is Doom and the issue 3 is Doom and Gloom, and then 4 is Resurrection. So actually, I was like, that's. I
That's
mean, maybe it's a stretch, man, but I thought that was quite
no, I
smart as
see
well.
it. I see it. I wonder how deliberate that was. Yeah.
I'm gonna believe it was completely deliberate and give them all of the flowers.
Mm. But man, like that desperation and that hopelessness in the third issue, just like some of the artwork. I think the early artwork in that issues depicts, uh, the forward and the Rions in glory and slowly deteriorating over the years, because I think at that point was
That
when it had become.
opening, incredible.
Yeah.
I think
It
that
only
was the 500-year point, if I remember rightly, just
it,
around about the 500 years, halfway into the journey.
At that point, it's also for her. It becomes a numbers game.
Hmm.
I think. I think that's the point in which she says, "There's basically if one more of you die, then we do not have a viable enough genetic newness, for want of a better word. I can't think of the phrase she uses. So much
Diversity.
better than genetic newness, but they don't have what they need to actually create a thriving society if they lose one more life. So for her, it's then a numbers game,
Yeah.
and decisions made after that are much more arbitrary. Arbitrary.
Well, I don't know, because that the decisions made after that feel like the ultimate brutalness and unfairness of the alien universe, but also the ultimate kindness that she can give the
Oh,
future.
what she does is amazing, and you would say it's the right decision because inbreeding may not be the best of ideas, and
No.
it might make doom for the future. But the way in which she goes about it is that, well, she's an artificial person, so it is going to be, no preference or anything
Calculated
else.
and cold, and yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, it's not gonna. It's not based on anything else. Preference. It's not about glory. So, yeah, I thought. I really
that
liked
was
issue 3.
such a cool panel as well, when they're all
So good.
floating out in space.
yeah, very
Yeah.
spooky. I mean, this generational ship has a glass dome essentially over its Taurus, and she just opens it up and they all get sucked out into space. And it's very ominous. But yeah, they do lose one more after she says she's going to take control of their breeding program. A
I
curious
I
young.
think that's the worst part of the series.
Oh yeah.
Not so much in they lose somebody or whatever. It's the fact that she so so all the Ryans are closed. There's a single Ryan left. How many was there? There was like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
All of them are locked off now because they've all fallen to the alien, and there's this one single one that the humans are living in. And apparently, this girl gets curious about trees, having heard about them, and is able to get into one of the other
I
ions.
thought that too. I'm like,
And
you think this leader would have really made sure they couldn't get into these other areas of the ship at this point, given how infested they were.
then also births an alien. Apparently, there's enough time passes that she's face hugged, but then again, I mean, it's hard to critique that nowadays, isn't it? After fucking AVP and Romulus and everything. But I mean, the sped up gestation, the sped up infection will always, I think, kind of irritate me a little bit. So those were pretty much the only two aspects of Utopia that kind of irked me, was her
Mm.
getting out there, and then the subsequent, oh no, we've made it back. Oh no, she's infected. Blah! That, yeah.
I think its only saving grace, if there is one, was Siostra punching through an alien's head. That was pretty cool from an art perspective. Is it a good time to talk about the Ryons?
By all means, bring them.
Because I I went down another rabbit hole, multiple rabbit holes, because I was interested to see whether, having reread it, the names that they'd given the Ryons were at all, kind of related to the Aliens universe, or is there any parallel within the story that they're telling? So, Ryan Gagarin. So I was like, first man space flight, no problem at all. I thought was interesting was that actually in his youth he was a foundryman. Sadly, not at a lead works, but at a steel works.
Well,
But
they explain as well early on what each of the Ryons do, don't they?
yes,
So Gagarin was where we fuel and fix, which I
yes.
think
So he
works
was a
quite well
foundryman.
there with the
Yeah.
Foundryman. Yeah.
And what's also interesting, and the reason that I tried to make this a good segue, is that there are two things that I thought was kind of good, or the parallels that you could make. So number one is that at the when he actually did his manned space flight, obviously he was known as the country's hero, but it was apparently catastrophic for the church, because a number of letters were received from believers saying that they were so impressed with science that they were renouncing God, saying we are obviously stronger than. So that was a disaster for them. And it didn't help that Gagarin was actually misquoted by somebody at a speech or a rally or something. He was misquoted as saying, "I went into space and found there was no God." So that was interesting. And then, last but not least, by that, there's a few theories, though never nothing has ever actually been confirmed as to how he died. But one of the theories that's out there is that he had to do a bit of a fast maneuver. That there was actually some kind of door or something left open, which meant all of the air whooshed out of the cabin. He would have lost consciousness and then crashed. And I thought, with them being vented into space, that was my oh so clever segue. Bullishly done.
I think didn't something like that also happen to one of the Soyuz capsules where there was a depressurization on the way down?
I think so.
Yeah, and yeah.
So Ryan Comrade, which is where they all had their hypersleep, I thought that speaks for itself. Full Horn, which is where the alien comes in, is it literally means cornucopia. So the Horn of Plenty. So they're kind of growing their stuff there. Marx speaks for itself. Ryan Decker was interesting because that is, if you translated that, it's actually post-Soviet, a second home within post-Soviet countries. So basically, they gave them to rich people to live in and try and get some fresh air. And that, of course, is where the atmosphere processor is. So I thought that was quite cool to turn
The
around and do
old
that.
the old school atmosphere processor that is trees.
That's true as well. Then there was two more before I bore everyone senseless. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. I'm so sorry. So then there is Bion K.
I think that's right.
Thank you.
I
Now
think.
that is actually the name of the earliest known Chinese physician who was believed to have to possess clairvoyance and X-ray vision,
And
which is
that's where
how
they
he's.
mend and teach.
Yes. And then last but not least is Magellan. Now, Magellan was actually the name of a Portuguese commander of a Spanish fleet called the Armada of Molucca, and he died in a battle in the Philippines where they were overarmed and too much armor there. They couldn't deal with the heat and they got beaten up, and it was one of the only times that the Spanish have ever been beaten by the Filipinos.
And Greg, you're gonna have to correct me here, but Spain is also in the UPP.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes. Yes.
that's where that
Spain is.
comes in.
Yep. Yep. Because Latin American countries, of course, are in the UA, but Spain, particularly, is UPP. So, yeah, Spain, Germany,
So
Slavic countries, and some of the Asian ones are
so we
UPP.
And
get a
just
nice spread
well,
of the member states there, then, don't we?
Well, and just
Yes.
on that, and to finish off, Greg, I didn't realize that. So I didn't say this, and now it is actually relevant because I was just desperate to shut up. A Ryan originates from a word in Frankish, which is spoken across Central Europe and also parts of Asia, which means honeycomb. So, Adam, when you were saying earlier about how it's these different sections and the round ship and everything else, but it's actually more around bureaucracy. So post-Soviet era, these do still exist. So there will be countries that have different suburbs, and it's basically bureaucracy is how they do your admin and how you do everything else. One of the countries that still have it is the Ukraine, and broken down into different rayons is Sevastopol. So, I kid you not.
Right, so that is some deep cut there.
Yeah,
I'm so
really took a
tired
deep
now.
dive on this one. Impressive.
Sorry,
No,
but
I
yeah.
always
So I
like to
There
thought
look
that
on
was
the
into this.
research. Nice.
I do think the idea of a generational ship is a really interesting setting for an alien story. Kind of reminds me of some other sci-fi we've seen that have had this concept, like The Expanse. Like I guess Pandorum would be another one of just this.
Well, I mean, Phalanx as well. It was about
Yeah.
generational ship.
Well, I was gonna say, and like this reminded me of Phalanx a lot in just how the society returned to a bit more primitive after having been lost on the ship for so long. You can see they're almost back to like kind of Stone Age living near the end of it. Before Sestra, is that how you say her name?
Seostra.
Siostra, before she makes the choice to off them, and after that, just her conversation with the queen was such a cool bit. Like, oh, I could just kill you all if I wanted to, but that's not my job. You were their choice in how they dealt with you, and they messed up. So we'll give you a shot, see how it goes. Um, but yeah, just the setting of the generational ship, just being so fed up with the state of humanity and the different factions and politics of it all, wanting to go 1,000 years somewhere else to live on a utopia. Definitely, I could see the appeal,
It's
but
so ironic, though, isn't it? This idea of escaping humanity because everybody else sucks, only to fail at your own humanity.
exactly, yeah.
We just
And
suck as
Useless.
a people.
You're part of the problem. You suck.
Yeah.
the only and well, not the we don't know how it would have been without the incidents, but the biggest reason they failed is because they try to be nice and save the
Yeah.
ship and
So the
unleash
moral
horrors.
of the story is just leave ships abandoned in space
Yeah,
and sea.
don't
Stop.
Every man for themselves.
I
don't
don't
answer
even think there
distress
was.
calls.
I don't even think there was a distress call. I think they just. There you go. They
They
just
just
picked it.
found it. Yeah,
They saw a
they
life
picked it up.
sign. Yeah,
Can I
That's the
just say,
problem. Their naivete, their uh, striving to ideals got them all killed. Basically, that's
And
the problem.
it's hilarious that this was written by Star Trek writers. Because Star Trek is about mankind at its best, and this is very much about mankind failing. So
Mhm.
the irony is hilarious to me.
The thing that I found very interesting about the generational ship aspect, one of the things we asked in the interview with the writers, I adored how they explained it as to why would we have a generational ship in the alien universe where we have FTL, we have cryostasis. Why would that be needed or wanted? And then seeing that, as the writers have put it, that it's an ideological thing where uh, to paraphrase them, they did not want to bring to Earth their old problems. They wanted a generational, not to Earth, to that paradise planet, old Earth, original problems. They wanted for people to grow out and perfect themselves in a society, change through the generations so that they can uh, get to those ideals when they get to that final destination. So if they were just frozen from how they originally were in the colonies, the UPP or whatever, there still would be problems. So it's interesting that even though this is one of our first or actually only UPP centered story, it's not even actually about the UPP as we know in the other expanded universe parts. It's actually more of an offshoot, this kind of ideological program. Because they mention it constantly in the story that even in the UPP, there were a lot of problems in the sense of corruption and the reason they are so wary with their military that's just there just in case. They did not want to go down the same route that the UPP is having. That never mind if it's a socialistic or uh, capitalistic society, corruption grows, human nature spoils things when lives and resources are on the line. So that's why they wanted to try and make something better with the voting system. And I am so pleased with seeing how the story takes it takes kind of a serious epic tone. I love the narration in the sense it's kind of for me it's closer to those very earliest Dark Horse comics, the Aliens and AVP ones, where you feel that kind of philosophical nature and the narration of these voices who are contemplating how does humanity fit into all of this? How does humanity survive and struggle in these situations? So I really adored the whole kind of arc, and even though um, there's only 4 issues of Utopia, and when we look at the other pages, it's probably even a bit shorter than standard 4 issue complete comics would be. But this whole story that's told there feels very complete and feels very detailed. I'm I think I'm mostly impressed with the second issue with Corporal turned General. How in that one issue you get a full complete sense how much time has passed, how things are progressing, and to me it didn't feel rushed. There's not a lot of pages where those things happen, but it all feels it feels like such a long journey. It feels like this big thing that happened over generations and how things are changing. It really feels like something that stays with you. I have a small issue there, which is the same with Phalanx. I'm never too fond of how long a society can just kind of survive with the aliens being either locked off or not finding the survivors. I'm never much of a too fan how a society can somehow for centuries survive with aliens, xenomorphs next door. But ignoring that little nitpick there, uh, the way the story presents its point is really it's really memorable. It has that kind of old Greek tragedy quality. I think I even mentioned that to them. I really love how you get the weight of it all that I did not really feel at the start with the Marvel comics. They kind of tried with some of that, but the combination here with the writing, the dialogue, the narration, and the artwork that emphasizes all of that creates a perfect mend that really brings all of that to light.
So speaking of the artwork there as well, so who did I say earlier did it? It was drawn by Michael Dowling and coloured by Chris Sotomayor. I think this is one of the visually best stories we've had from Marvel, and it's up there amongst the best with Dark Horse as well. I think the renditions of the aliens, the renditions of the human characters, the ship itself, even like the moody sort of introduction to the Weyland-Yutani ship as it's drifting through space is incredibly moody. And I think there's a very reserved use of the colors in this story as well. It like we were saying earlier, they do have access to red and green in the palette, but it makes very limited use of it, and it's striking when it does. So, like the Praetorian's introduction, it's the red of the welder illuminating it, giving it this sort of hellish quality, and then when we get our first wound, the red of the blood is striking against the corpse. So it's easily, in my opinion, amongst the best. And there's a lot of we've spoke about panels, we spoke about moments that really stand out in the run, and it's not just for the narrative reasons; it is for the visual quality of them. The library edition, the front and back spread is one of the spreads from the second part of Utopia during the all-out battle, the chaos, and it's simply stunning.
That looks so good.
absolutely stunning. Although actually thinking about it there, that did remind me of another nitpick I had. UPP using pulse rifles.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know that's it's such a minor thing to gripe about. But yeah, there's just absolutely so many panels in this series in Utopia specifically that just look phenomenal. I do genuinely think it's one of the best Marvel's done and one of the best Alien comics all around.
Yeah, the artwork was definitely impressive with Utopia in particular. I got the sense this wasn't fully a UPP sanctioned voyage, that they had come from the UPP, but this was kind of their own
Splinter
thing that
Group.
they were doing. Yeah. And this is the longest intentional flight I think we've seen in the Alien universe. Like over 1,000 years. I can't think of another story that had a travel time that long in the franchise.
No, I mean, how long are they intending to travel for Covenant? Is it like 20 years, something like that? And then there's various colony ships mentioned in the RPGs and things like that. But no, you're quite right. I don't think anything's ever suggested going as far as 1,000 years. But that's how desperate they are to get away from the evil and corrupt humanity that's left behind on Earth and the Orion arm of our wonderful little galaxy.
Would you like to see this as its own paperback of just this story? Do you think it should be released that way? Or do you think it's too like part of the whole
Well, I
Black Dragon
haven't
Blood?
I haven't counted up the pages in it to see if it it warrants a trade paperback for itself. But Dark Horse has published some of the smaller stories, smaller collections in the past as little hardbacks. I think they did Salvation and Sacrifice together as a little hardback at some point. So, I mean, it's not outside the realms of possibility or reasonability, but it is visually speaking very much in line with the intent of Black, White, and Blood, and should be kept there. But if Marvel want to cash in and drop us a little fancy pants hardback of just it in the future, then sure. Because I one of the things I was actually disappointed by in this collected edition was that they didn't group Utopia together. So it is literally just issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, issue 4. And that includes, part 1 of Utopia, then the 2 shorts, part 2 of Utopia, then the 2 shorts. So I was a little disappointed they didn't actually group Utopia together in here. So that would be a nice thing to see if they were to ever recollect it.
They didn't have titles in this one at all. I had to flip back to the beginning to be like,
Yes.
what's this one called now?
But then again, I can't remember if they had titles in the individual issues other than the credit page. They did. Okay,
No,
Sarah's
just on
nodding.
the so it said it on the
Just
credit
on the
page.
title page.
Yeah, so it'd say
Yeah.
Utopia Part 1, and then, but that wasn't always the first page either, because that would confuse me, because I'd start reading it, and then suddenly I was like, why is this story different? But it's because I'd missed the fact that there was suddenly
It
this
said to
title
become
page that was halfway through the first part of Utopia, and I was lost. So,
So I think we'd probably all agree Utopia is the best thing of this collection.
yes. For
By
me,
a far
personally, I
margin.
would agree. Yeah.
The thing
Me
that
too.
I'm also happy about is that the authors did mention that they like AVP, so potentially if Marvel would ever like to bring them back again, I mean, I would be happy to see them on Alien, Predator, whatever, but if they would ever be allowed to do AVP, that's what I like when we have these new creatives, when we find this. It's, for me, this is a little gem, and I would absolutely like to see them return again. Of course, the artists and the person who did the colors as well. The whole package was absolutely fantastic there. So any one of those creatives there, I would gladly, in a heartbeat, love to see again.
Yeah, definitely. And especially with AVP, as you said, Greg, I have to imagine it can't be too much longer before Marvel finally forays into that. I'm hoping next year is the year. We will see.
One day.
We've now got the AVP specific skins coming to fall, guys.
AVP
So-
is back because
Look.
the beans can dress up now.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day,
first
you
date.
know, we know that they've been hesitant to AVP as a concept, especially due to the baggage of the movies and the reception to the movies. Now that they're actually acknowledging the concept and the movie specifically, maybe we'll start to see this reluctance to do AVP subside, and we'll get something.
I mean, they were also in Hunting Grounds and Dead by Daylight as well, but
I mean, yeah, that's why I'm
Okay, fair point.
in in the sense that if we get an AVP comic one day soon-ish, I want it to be with writers like this, or if they want, it can be somebody else. I would hope it would be them, or uh, something with such a serious and philosophical tone. In the sense of the first AVP comic,
yeah.
it was done in a very serious and heavy way. So I think that's one of the reasons it flourished. And in a kind of reboot there, I would love to see it uh, being approached in a more uh, serious, detailed, and mature fashion. Again, we will talk about the other shorter comics, the other shorter stories in this anthology, which I did not hate any. I liked all of them, some more, some less. But yeah, I would more like to see any future AVP with some Utopia style in them than something completely wacky because it's a versus thing.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I mean,
definitely
the
down for that.
problem with AVP is Dark Horse started it and ended it so strong. Like AVP might
Yes.
get flack for the movies, but that first AVP comic was one of the best sellers I think for Dark Horse that they've ever had, and is one of the most respected among fans. And I know for you and I personally, Aaron, how they ended with Thicker Than Blood was just an incredible story that showed that the concept really is more than just these two monsters battling it out. You know, it can be. So I really hope when Marvel finally does get around to that, it's something like this, like Utopia, that tries to take the story in. It's a deeper story than just these monsters fighting it out. Of course, we want to see that; like that should be part of it. But um, yeah, I definitely think they need something really strong to bring AVP back.
But before we tangent on AVP as a concept, um, I think we've probably said enough on Utopia.
Before we finish,
Okay,
though,
go ahead,
just
Sarah, if you've got something else.
can we talk about how extra Seostra's dialogue is? I love it. I think it's brilliant. There are some absolute blinders. But when you have something like, with my mind afire, I set my path anew toward the heart of the ship, the burning core that would silence the screams with the final vengeance of the queen I'd become. Honestly, it is like dialed up. And that's one of the things that I really liked about it. She's talking about you can't forget the screams, which for me is that tie back to the original tagline and everything else, with that being in your face. It talks about how, because when she opens the roof to vent all of the people out of it, she talks about a place where the very physics of sound found no purchase. I think it is absolutely blinding. I think that
Mm.
the dialogue, and it feels as though it's that, I don't want to say it's flowery language because I don't think it's true, but it's that it's very idealistic in that way of how something is being described, rather than go and despite what I would prefer to have done, the kindness was to open the hatch and let them face a quick death rather than what would face them if we left them to be eaten and ravaged by aliens. No, 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 no. She's and I think it was one of the things that added or made Utopia a stronger story as it was. I don't know what you lot think or whether you were like, it was annoying.
I liked it because I thought the way she'd turn her phrases, or the way she'd word her story to the queen as this is framed, it was what Greg was saying earlier. It's mature. It gives it this. Greg said Greek tragedy, but perhaps a Shakespearean kind of way of putting it might have. I don't want to say be more appropriate, Greg, but an alternative way of putting it, because it's certainly this is Alien when it's actually trying to be thematic and make you think and give you characters that aren't stupid, they are intelligent. And Siostra demonstrates this through her language, but also gives it that little bit of android flair. David is David is a drama queen in his own right, but Siostra has that sort of same dramatic flair without being, without having the daddy issues and the tantrums and everything. But she's there being like, what you were saying about the screams. She says, let me read it. I'm gonna have to get the exact dialogue, but when she vents them all into space,
Yeah.
and
Yes,
she's
the
got
page just before that I read. Yeah.
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 So and though we were in the deepest reaches of space, a place where the very physics of sound found no purchase, I could not help but ask myself one question over and over again: why could I still hear them scream? That's beautiful, isn't it?
And it calls back to in issue 1. Um, One of the things that she talks about, so when they let the ship dock with the lone survivor and they open the door, and you were talking earlier about the alien framed in the welder's light and it being the red. Um, and she says it was impossible to describe the screams. Maybe somewhere in your ancestral memory you can remember them still. That song of death.
Yeah. And
Excellent.
and just speaking to like that whole surprise of the framing, even in that moment, that still works as she's talking to future generations of humans when it's quite clear, it's a reference to the aliens' genetic memory as well. It just works. It works so wonderfully.
Yeah, and a little bit later, so at the point in which she vents the humans into space, she talks about being out of love, and then very shortly afterwards, she starts talking about the aliens. She talks one of them and starts saying, "I need to tell you this, love." When she's talking to, so it's that transpose over it being it's not about humans or aliens or anything else. It's about that drive, that purity, those ideals, and how they are being lived
And
by
it
the aliens
also
better than us.
and it also takes her 500 years to come to that
Mm.
decision. This isn't a quick um seduced by the aliens kind of thing that we see take place throughout other entries in the universe. She has 500 years to consider her freedom from her responsibilities to do what the dumb monkey people wanted to do, and come to this realization that the aliens are the manifestation of Utopia. So it's not rushed, it's paced, it's considered, it's thoughtful, and I like that approach to her decision to be like, what, fuck it, I'm with the aliens.
And she sums it up. And again, Greg was talking earlier about it being so tight. It's really smart with the where they use the artwork and the colors and the narration as well, because it's only on the one page after she's made a decision and this time has passed. She explains it in one go, in which she says, "You can't help but move forward." And I'm like, "That's smart because the ship that they're on is called Forward." So okay, you have no crime, you have no pain, you have no one left behind. No capitalists, no nihilists, which is what you said earlier, Aaron. No fascist, just the many without even the need for a voice. I am so happy to be once again in the service of Utopia, for I have so much to share from those who have failed. Would you like to hear a story? Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah. I'd like to thank Sarah for bringing that up about the writing. Again, that's one of the things that the writing is so tight and thoughtfully done here. I mean, honestly, the writing in this comic in this limited number of pages, it's better than a lot of the recent novels, just in my taste. And uh, to have that paired with those unforgettable images of some of my favorite panels are of just Siostra's face, also in the dialogue with the corporal, but seeing how her expressions goes when she's talking about her inner thoughts. And uh, again, one of the things that I really liked about this was her character being written in a very unique way, yet it feels completely in line with the previous films. This is one of the better representations of how I personally believe that synthetics should be portrayed in the Alien universe. I personally hadn't been too happy with how some of the recent novels portray synthetics always, but here you can see that Siostra has a style of David in the especially David from Prometheus, in the sense of she's a felicitator, she is a facilitator, whereas David was, in other words, basically the robot butler to Peter Wayland. You see that subtlety, that servility, but at the same time, you see that there's something more. They are completely emotionally intelligent, completely human in mind, in person, and they are just always very constricted in the way how they express themselves. But there's always something, in my opinion, with a good synthetic that makes you think, what's behind those eyes? What's there? What are they thinking about? In the making of Prometheus, there's a line from Michael Fassbender where he was talking about what he wanted for David, which I think is always with good androids, and here with Siostra as well, where he said, um, I wanted you, when you see David, to think, is he being just naive, or is he kind of screwing with me? Is he kind of fucking taking the piss out of me without knowing it? So that's that kind of intelligence and emotional expression that these synthetics are very much capable of. Yet you see they're not entirely human, but they have all of the capabilities for it. That's why I also think this is one of the best portrayals of a synthetic in
Yeah,
recent years.
and to your point, I think it sets it out. This is why I liked it. It very quickly explained why they would stop to pick up one lone survivor. Do you know what I mean? It was done within one box, done. It's our ideals, and I'm proud of them for doing it. But within a couple of pages, when they dock the ship, one of the first things that she's talking about, she turns around and says, I've never been so afraid." So very early on, you go, okay, so this is an artificial person who has got either an understanding of how to express or works that into their vocabulary. It's going to be part of the narration. It's going to be part of the decision making, and quick, so it doesn't come later as a surprise. It's not, oh, they've got. It's go straight in there with it. It was really smart storytelling to bring all of that in so quickly. And for me, I'm a fan of artificial persons. Within the franchise, and I think it helps lend to that more rounded synthetic or artificial person, as opposed to it being, oh, it's a shock that they've changed or malfunctioned, or they're perfectly capable of all of this, and I'm glad it set it out from the start.
So, shall we get to the shorter stories?
Yes. If nobody else has anything to say on Utopia, nope, I'm getting head shakes. Okay, so I will start us off with Sarah. Please tell us your favorite short in this.
Sure. So my favorite short was Maternal Instinct. Should I give you a quick synopsis of
Please.
Maternal Instinct? Yeah, okay. So it is one of the shorts within the run of stories. I think it's issue 1, if you've got the individuals. So it is the story of a lone survivor's guided escape from the alien infested ship Abhatak, told from the viewpoint of Mother.
So we're keeping very much with the synthetics
Yes.
in this issue, or this short, sorry. This is probably one of my favorites as well. So there's so many shorts in this that I just genuinely really enjoyed. This is one of them as well. Nobody else picked this one though. Just for clarity, nobody else picked this one. But
Because you all have got no taste.
I
I
was close. I was close in one instance, but Yeah,
Uh,
I think we're gonna agree with a lot of things you're gonna say there, Sarah, about it.
so, Sarah, tell us, why is this your favorite? Why was this your pick?
So this is my favorite for two reasons. When we were talking about Utopia and Aaron, you were talking about the palette and everything else. Scrap the whole palette and let's go green. So the majority of the panels was green on green on green, and I loved it. Um, the panels as well. I don't know the right words. I'm not a super comic person, but either Aaron or Adam will help me. A lot of the panels themselves felt as if they were constantly moving. So when you were looking, I don't know whether it was like the blurry lines or anything, but it felt as if it was in that way. It was shown that it's moving at speed.
There's a
So it was
nice sense of momentum in the artwork, yes, which
yes,
I think very much suits the narrative that was going off here. Like you said, Sarah, it was all about mother. Was it 8,500 was the mother that was in this one?
I think so. I think so.
Yes, yes, it was
We
that
we,
number,
we do
8,500.
like we do like to throw around a lot of different thousand and hundred numbers when it comes to the mothers. But yeah, so it's all about her mother guiding this lone survivor through the ship. So that momentum of the artwork is very appropriate for what's going off.
Yes,
And
and
it,
it also all feels very. And again, my words will be wrong, but hopefully I express myself. It all feels spiky. Do you know what I mean? It's very sharp lines. Utopia was, again, it'll be wrong words. I'm sorry, but it was kind of blurry. Do you know what I mean? Is in the fact it was slightly softer and it wasn't the it looks incredible, but this is very, very sharp. It feels spiky when you're looking at the pictures, which I think is good and works with the story itself as well. Um, so yeah, I liked that about it. So there's a little boy who, unfortunately, on this alien infested ship, we learn that his parents have been hived, and he was hidden and sedated. So there are some pretty crap odds. So there is a 33% chance of his making his way through the ship. Um, the actual escape pod itself launching successfully is a 32% chance. There is a 74% chance of him getting face hooked. And overall, once even if he managed to get past all of those odds, there's a 50-50 chance that he will not make it through his space voyage in the escape pod. So immediately you're thinking, again, it's running the numbers. So you've got the parallel to Utopia, which is actually it's worth a shot. And also, I don't know, Greg, you're a Doctor Who fan, aren't you? You're a Doctor Who guy. Yeah. It made me think of, I think it's there was a two-parter in David Tennant's run, and it was when the Ood all went crazy and they were influenced by Satan. It was a two-parter,
Oh,
I think 10th Planet
yes,
Satan's bit. And do
yes,
you
yes.
remember there's the captain and he sits pressing buttons because he has to move oxygen because the space station is venting oxygen and he can only have oxygen in 2 rooms, 3 rooms at a time. So he has to vent one room behind them before he can flow it through to the room in front, and then he can open the doors to let them through.
Yeah.
So when they're yeah, you know the one I mean, and they're being pursued. So I liked this is in the fact that it's what can she do? She can open doors, she can shut doors, she can close bulkheads, she can guide. I liked that. It was a puzzle that went through really, really well. Lots and lots of green. And yeah, I thought the artwork was brilliant and the momentum was fantastic. And of course, in the end, the little boy successfully makes his way out. Awesome looking queen. I liked it. Maybe it's crap, but I loved it. And then the ship explodes, presumably destroying all of the alien life forces on board. But hey, with Romulus, who knows? Maybe they made it.
Adam, what did you think of this one? Because I already think I know one of your complaints straight away.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. So I liked the story, the dynamic between this ship's computer mother and the child and her helping him to escape. That was well done. That was interesting. My main issue was, and I'll be charitable with saying, some of the aliens were again overly referenced. I might accuse them of being traced, but I'd have to put them in Photoshop to be sure. but in particular, there's a few shots of the warrior xenomorphs right there. If you look up the sideshow alien warrior, you'll see that exact same thing in that exact same pose. Same with the queen alien in the money shot with her. That is the
Yep.
sideshow alien queen. So at least he was consistent and stuck with sideshow. But I would rather,
There was a
I
neck
know those
one in there as
deadlines are
well.
tough. Sorry, what was that?
Excuse me, sorry, but yeah, there was a neck one in there as well, the first
Oh,
shot,
was
but
there? Okay.
yeah.
Not consistent then. But yeah, like I know those deadlines are tight, but I always have to be like, how many young artists would kill for an opportunity to do something for Marvel? And it's the things we fans are going to pick up on is if it feels like the xenomorphs are done lazily, and unfortunately, I felt like they were in this story, and that was what brought it down for me more than anything else. Overall, though, I still think it was a decent story because that's just me judging it from an artistic standpoint. But the story still had me engaged, and overall, I'd say it was still strong overall, narratively speaking.
Greg, how about yourself?
Uh, well, yeah, I'm two minds about it. On the artistic side, to play kind of devil's advocate for a second there, if uh, alien figures or statues are going to be referenced, I am at least happier when good models and the well proportioned ones are mm, used as reference than some comics used to maybe do with clunkily posed NECA action figures. So uh, I will give it that at least the references here are of well posed and well received statues there. But also, there are a few shots near the end with the alien queen, just a few panels chasing the boy, where it's all completely original, and that looked really nice. So yeah, it's not that we as fans would have liked to see that as well, just the completely original version. But yeah, probably deadlines and pages, who knows. Still, it's for fans who know this property. When something like that is done, it's very visible and noticeable. uh, I will say that the alien eggs that are originally done there were interesting. I do like when you see that uh, an artist bring a different kind of styling to that, even though objectively speaking, yeah, it looks different than what you would generally expect. But I do like how kind of rounder and more stocky they were than usual, and I like how the hiving was done. There's a panel of a facehugger jumping at you that was also completely original. There, it looked really nice as well. But not counting the artwork, what I mostly liked about that comic was the story. I was really intrigued uh, at such a premise, and for the writer, I'll give props there. Especially, I really liked the writing there, how they portrayed Mother. Again, it's not usually how we see her, and I don't know if this was accidental or not. Maybe it's just a nerdy coincidence. And again, people probably don't always care, but in the RPG, there's a whole list of the Mother series from 6,000 up to like 10,000, etc. And there is like a cutoff point from which Mother they're able to do, whether they're able to have dialogue, etc., with that you can converse with. So there are more complex models out there, and this being an 8500 series is completely up in that line. So that all fits in that type of nerdy lore for anybody who cares there. But I also kind of found it interesting that the story was about this AI who just has its particular type of job there, but wants to save that last little child there. And honestly, the panel that won me over was the last one when uh, the mother unit was going like, I have plenty objectives, and I can't get to all of them. While you, the alien queen, you have one singular-minded focus, etc., etc. You are perfect killing machine for your environment, and then in with those last panels, but this is not your environment. You were thinking it's that little kind of, oh, was she going to abandon the kid, not going to give him time to escape? But no, she find a way to do it. So I mean, it's kind of a sappy thing, but when something like that is done, it's an easy win for me there. So I did really like it. That was a nice emotional thing without being too uh, out of place for the mother unit. So I think it was a nice balance there. I'm never a fan when you see any type of synthetic system going with these percentages. Oh, there's this much percent chance that this will happen, this much percent that this chance. It doesn't give a lot of um, usefulness to a story. I usually don't think. Here, maybe, but generally, for the writing aspect, for such a small page number there, I was really pleasantly surprised. It's one of my top comics in this short anthology series there, so I was happy with it.
So I likewise think this is one of the really good ones. It was in my list of really good to pick from. We haven't mentioned the creative team behind this. Maternal Instincts was written by Ryan Caddy and drawn and coloured by Dev Malia Pramanik. So all the art was by the same person there. I very much liked the choice to go with the green palette for this one, especially because it was so the narrative was so focused on mother. So that leans the green lent heavily into the font color, it lent into the monitors, it lent into that kind of aspect of it, and it works well for the aliens as well, because of the blood and blah blah blah. It gets liberal use in the hive that we get brief views of in this. Greg mentioned the eggs. I really liked the way the eggs were depicted in the hive here because they had them quite enclosed and it was looking a bit more trappish. And I thought that worked really well, especially like on the panels where mother's guiding the kid. I think his name was Joshua. Through the hive, and she's like, "Keep your eyes down." And then you've got this panel of his mother and somebody else above him. That was really that was a really cool visual there. The percentages thing I thought was a very nice way to start it off because again it follows through the sort of Utopia theme with Seostra, but then it also sets up the play that Maternal Instincts has in mother looking after the kid. It goes from this cold hard facts, these cold hard numbers, to what seems like a more of an emotional state of okay, let's get the kid out. There's a good chance he's going to fuck up or die, and if he does get out, there's a good chance it's going to spread the infection, when my entire intent here is to not allow that. So it's a nice contrast between emotion and machine cold, that kind of thing. I didn't notice the tracing until it was pointed out to me. So I actually liked the depictions of that panel I held up. I think, Greg, did you mention it being disguised well? The problem, apart from the morality and the laziness of it, of course, but the big issue I had with the Roko in the first Marvel runs was the tracing didn't feel a part of the fucking panel. The part of the artwork, it always felt layered and it didn't come together in perspective and in art. It didn't feel like it in this. The reference, the traced elements actually felt a part of the panel. So it sort of fooled me enough to enjoy them. But the original depictions in it was nice. Very much so. It's a short one. It's a sweet one. It's a simple one. Perhaps not as strong visually as some of the other ones where it's like, what, I'd love to stick that on my wall. I don't think there's anything quite of that quality in it, but that's not to say I dislike, a lot of the moments, like when where was it when Joshua was running away from the Queen? You know, when he's running away from the Queen towards the escape pod. That's a nice moment. It's a nice piece of visuals. But again, nothing I think I'd want to stick up on the screen. I did actually think she'd let him die, especially towards the end when it's like she's mother in the fucking hell, Aaron. In the narration, mother in the narration is sort of leading this up to be I guess the alien's too perfect. You know, tough shit. Especially when there's a moment where she's like, "Goodbye, Joshua." I thought she was going to actually close the door, and that was it. He wasn't going to escape, and that was going to be the end of it. So I was pleasantly surprised that he did end up in a escape pod and survives, and mother blows herself up, and that's it.
No, she was just saying goodbye. It was not a goodbye, you're going to die. And I think it is refreshing when you see those AI stories that the AI ends up, being okay, like Bishop and Aliens, even though we may have our suspicions in the midst of the story. The Creator is a movie that kind of played on that as well, where it's like, oh, is this just programming or are they good? And it's like, oh, they're good. We just kind of are a messed up species or whatever. So I do kind of like that that play on it, where the AI actually is a positive protector force, just because it's different. Because I think so many stories have done that. Oh, the AI was evil the whole time, So
Well, and if we didn't think it was cruel enough, we got the name of the ship. So I, of course, immediately hooked up with my best friend Google. So Abhatak is the name of it's an Irish legend of a tyrannical magical dwarf who ruled over the lands and was quite mean to the people. So eventually, a neighbouring chieftain kills him, and they buried him standing. And the following day, they're like, right, dead. There we are. Move on. Following day, he's back. He's worse than ever. He's crueler than ever. So the chieftain picks up his sword, finds him, kills him again. They bury him, put him back in his tomb, brick him back up again. There you are. He's standing up. Following day, he's back again. And he's on his wanders and he's terrorizing everybody. So the chieftain has a little chat with a local druid and says, what do I need to do? And the druid turns around and says, right, kill him, but bury him upside down, standing on his head, because that means that his magical powers will not be able to rise and he will stay dead. So the chieftain goes out, kills him, tips him on his head, buries him upside down, and the evil, tyrannical, magical dwarf is never seen again. Now, which is quite cool, and I thought that was nice, not too relevant there. It's not super relevant to this story, but I do think it was cool. So later versions of it had the requirement of this killing this evil creature as being he had to chop his head off, that he was always upside down because of his magic, and it is believed or suggested that that was one of the legends that Bram Stoker used to make part of his story of his telling of Dracula. And I thought that was wicked and made this even more of my favorite.
So a bit of a random theme going off there that influenced you, Sarah.
It did. When I read that, I was like, well, now I've got tyrannical magical dwarves, so I'm doubling down.
Dublin. Irish folklore. Okay. Would anybody else like to say anything on Maternal Instinct, or should we move on to the next one? Okay, we're moving on. Now, Adam, I would like you, before you go, I would like you to tell us your favourite short, your pick for favourite short, but I don't want you to go any further. I just want you to tell us the name of your favourite short.
Morsel.
Greg, Sarah, please tell the audience the name of your pick for least favourite short in this anthology.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Morsel, aka Donut.
I'm a donut.
I'm a donut.
That's
Okay.
funny. I can see why you wanted to keep that secret now, Aaron.
So,
Okay,
audience,
this is gonna be fun.
Adam, why was this your pick for favourite short within this anthology?
Okay, so again, beyond Utopia, I felt all these stories were pretty short. You can only do so much with them, right? You only have a little bit to kind of convey your idea and capture the audience. None of the stories really go too in depth, in my opinion. That's not to say they're not bad. They're, like you said, Aaron, with the last one, it's short, sweet, and does the job, right? So with this one, we start off in this massive vehicle, the Goliath, they call it. Yeah, and it's almost like this light-hearted kind of office setting where they're just doing random small talk about who's eating whose sandwich, and our main character Carrick is doing this Zen meditation on her donut. And so it starts off as this really light-hearted tone, like, okay, what this is different, like what's going on here, right? And then we establish the world a little bit, and it's this ranching colony where they say they found this octoped species that breeds like rabbits and tastes like chicken. So it's a lucrative ranching opportunity. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is like Rishi. We have the kind of industrial future kind of farm vibe, which I think is unique for the Alien series. And again, it kind of takes me back to that original EVB comic to Rishi. We don't really focus on any of the other characters too much. They're not important besides Carrick. Once they arrive, they find this horrific scene at one of the ranch outposts with a number of the livestock dead on the ground, with blood on the ground. And another thing was the sky was red, so it really leads to this ominous kind of, red sky in the morning, take warning kind of vibe for me. So as they're looking around and seeing the dead livestock, of course they get attacked by the xenomorphs, and there's a lot of commotion. Um, Eventually, after most of them are killed, Carrick, is telling one who's calling for help to be quiet, and he gets killed. And then a xenomorph stares her down. There's this interesting moment where she expects to die, and the xenomorph leaves her be. And she theorizes in her mind that this is because it wants her to marinate in her fear before it kills her, which is kind of a horrifying thought, but also ties to the whole donut idea that she's doing this Zen meditation on the donut because that will make it more delicious or whatever. So eventually, she kind of runs into the aliens again after walking amongst the destruction and kind of accepts her fate. And we don't know if that was just her interpretation or if that was actually literally what the xenomorphs were doing, and they just wanted to munch her while she was afraid, or if they're going to use her as a host or whatever. So I like that air of mystery to it, and her just being so terrified and trying to make sense of why she was the one that didn't get killed. And so to me, that was just an interesting question. I thought the art was solid enough for me, and I liked the setting. So overall, those I think were my main reasons why this story I thought was interesting and well done.
Greg, counterpoint.
Well, I I want to preface with this. Uh, I did not hate any single short here, and even with this being my least favorite, maybe it would be more accurate to call it for me my most what the fuck what the fuck story, uh, because that beginning. I did like the beginning small talk, but then when we pan over to our main character with the focus of uh, being the donut, getting inside the donut. It was the lightheartedness was a bit strange to me there, and then especially with how things progress, it was it just wasn't my vibe completely. But now that Adam has mentioned some of the aspects, I do understand. Yeah, it had a bit of that Ryushi vibe. I do get that. Though thinking about it, especially when they're on the ground there on the ranch, maybe it had some EVPR vibes as well, which was also kind of for me love and hate at the same time. But well, one of the things that was for me a bit off-putting, the alien design itself. The aliens were drawn well. It's just a creative choice, a matter of taste in what type of alien they choose to portray. I'm happy they used animal hybrids. That's something that we should see more of, and I'm always up for using that and experimenting with the design in that way. I think that's the best way if you want to draw a new variant, that doing it through an animal hybrid is the best way. The aliens themselves, they were ACM models with custom backpipes and a custom tail. Uh, some of the panels looked a bit though, especially the last panel, which what the fuck dialogue for me. I'm the donut. It had just taking that dialogue out of it. The last panel is really good, really good. The character's desperation and the alien's open jaw looks real nice. That's something that, yeah, I would mind having that up on the wall. But I was kind of confused in that sense where everybody gets killed, then the alien shows up and then decides to go, and she's theorizing why. I do get and understand the idea, yes, maybe they are sadistic, maybe they like the fear to be amplified, and in theory that is something that I should like. But I think that we didn't have enough panels to portray that well enough, because just a few pages later the aliens are returned to kill her. So it was like, she's cooking, let her cook 5 more seconds before we finally get her, just to get her peak crust or something like that. uh, in theory, it's something that if it was maybe explored in a longer format comic or or a novel, could be interesting. But I just think the complete potential was not done the best there. Uh, Again, it's just the beginning of the donut and the last piece of the of I am the donut. Comparing that with thematically, it does make sense, but it it just not something that I would expect in an alien uh, short story to see. So that's what kind of puts me off guard, and it's maybe the short that makes me laugh the most in that sense. How ridiculous it has, some of that resurrection kind of strange comedy vibes with it. I can't even completely say it's not a bad story. It's just something that I uh, was not expecting in that sense. Some of the other artwork in terms of design and everything was pretty good, pretty well done. I liked the giant vehicle. I liked the opening shots with the kind of levitating base thing. The victim, the weird goat things when they're dismembered, really nicely done. How combining the colors and the art, I really like it. It so even though it's not my favorite, I wouldn't vote on not having that short at all. I'm always of the opinion that these are be it a novel anthology or a comic anthology, these are the settings where you're supposed to throw everything from the darkest and craziest to the wackiest and silliest thing you want, to just throw everything and see what sticks. So even though it's not for me, but I did get a chuckle out of it. It's not a story I will be thinking about too much, though I probably will remember those ridiculous lines for something. So it had some impact there. So yeah, that's my opinion of it.
So during my first read through of the series, I considered issue 2 to be the weakest of the entire run. And that was because this was issue 2 contained Utopia aside. This is Utopia aside. So that was because it contained Morsel and it contained First Day. Spoilers there. So I had memories of this one being a bad one. On rereading it in prep for this, I was like, okay, it's not terrible. It's okay. It's fine. There were things in it that I thought had value. I actually quite liked. It was a double-edged thing for me. I quite liked the concept of the aliens letting the character Carrick. What's the cooking term, Adam? Marinate. I quite liked the idea of the aliens letting her marinate in her fear, as if her being terrified would make them tastier to it, make her tastier to them, because I do like the sadistic aspect of the alien. You know, I like the idea that it's taking pleasure in people's pain. But then on the flip side of that, I will critique and be a little disappointed when we don't see that sadism coming out in terms of capturing hosts for a hive. You know, my one of my big issues with Alien 3 is the way that it just fucking mows people down, and it's not taking people and hiving them up and getting them ready for the queen that's coming. Alex White likes to take the piss out of my critique of Into Charybdis for being the aliens are being too violent. The aliens aren't securing hosts and stuff like that. It's a little joke that we have between each other, where I'm like, no, I want you to be sadistic with them. I want to see arms being broken as it's securing people in weird ways or getting them back through tunnels to get them to the hive. So that's where I kind of like have a little problem with this is, yes, I like the sadism, but boo, I don't like it when the aliens go on a killing spree all the time, you know? So that was an issue I had with this. I do agree with Adam in terms of I like the AVP sort of vibes and callbacks with this ranching planet, the octoped sort of cattle was interesting. It took me a few times to notice that yes, the little horse things, goat things, did indeed have 8 legs. It's like 2 legs. It's like a cow, but they've doubled up each side of.
It's kind of like Avatar, how they do it. Some of their animals.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So I like that. I thought that was cool. This short makes a lot more use of red, rather than any green. That gives it a nice striking quality, especially when they come across the first killing field of all the octoped things. I think they give them a name. Did they give them a name? No. They don't give it a name. Sorry, but that was cool. You know, that was a nice, striking visual moment. But there's other bits like this splash page of the death. I think that looks terrible. You know, I don't like the perspective on that. I don't like the detail on the alien in that. It just does not look like a good page to me.
I don't understand how the angle works. I got that's what because I'm like, it's his mouth, but does it curl? Because it's quite front on, but I don't.
It's like
It's a long one.
The perspective of that artwork is not great. And then there's also things like this guy rocking an M4, M16 Armalite style thing. I always think that's boring. I hate it when we don't get visual continuity with the other weaponry. You know, I might have moaned about the UPP using pulse rifles, but that would have been a more appropriate moment for a character to be using a pulse rifle, or just something that shared a bit better design language with the alien universe as we know it. And like the farmstead itself, again, same critique, kind of boring. It looks like modern contemporary stuff, and it doesn't look like prefabricated colony kind of things. At least AVP, the comic, when it did that, it had some more like Hadley's Hope components to it. Although there are a few moments of them having some old school looking homesteads that are a bit really. But you know, I will always be a little disappointed with contemporary style designs in the alien stuff. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. It's okay. It's not meh. I mean, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. Some bits of value to be had in it, but it's one of the poorer ones for me.
I wasn't a fan of that same panel you mentioned with the alien either. I like the side profile shot when she's staring it down, and of course the end shot. But again, we don't know if it kills her. It could very well just be taking her as a host, and that whole thing was just her whole interpretation of it. So I do like that open-ended mystery of it. But yeah, I honestly don't think any of the shorts in this aren't without problems. Honestly, I mean, Utopia is the meat and potatoes of why you're here, honestly. And the other short stories, while they are intriguing and some are really good in my opinion, and others are a bit weaker. I also agree that I don't hate any of them. I don't strongly dislike any of them. Like they're all decent to pretty good, but Utopia is why you're here.
Sarah, Why did you pick this as your least favorite?
The three of you have talked about it beautifully, and I don't want to repeat what any of you have said because I pretty much agree with all of it. I think I would add two things. So number one, remember my pal Google? Well, the name of the planet in which Morsel is set, which is Adhefira, is the actual name of a star in the constellation of Leo. And it literally means, when it's translated, is the lock of hair, as it is a star in the main of Leo in that constellation. No real relevance, but my pal Google,
It's
easy
Sarah's
B.
thing, Googling the names.
Yeah, I'm sat there going, oh, where could this take me? It didn't take me anywhere. That's not. I think the other thing that I would say is that, as with anything, whether it's a story or whether it's a film, it doesn't matter, or life in general, you bring yourself and the other things that you've read or immersed yourself in the past to whatever story or whatever you're doing now. Yeah, so you're a product of your experiences and or how you've interpreted things that have happened to you. So coming into this story, number one, of course, it starts straight after with no break with the splash page of the last page of Utopia Part 2, in which the general is dead. Maybe Seostra did it. So immediately I'm going into a story having just really enjoyed this Part 2. So when I first read it, I was like, oh, this is jarring. Um, I think the second part of it is because somewhere in my brain, when we talk about fear and how it impacts the body and everything else, two things come into my mind. One of which is because I'm pretty sure that in something that I've read or seen, that with the chemicals, like the endorphins and everything that are released when you are afraid, would actually make your flesh taste bitter. So I'm going, well, you wouldn't want this because that's going to make you taste bitter, not going to make you taste better. And as well, the fact that you don't marinate a donut was irritating me. And then the last part of it was The Walking Dead, when it was still kind of like peak Walking Dead, is there was a character called Bob, who got bitten by one of the zombies, one of the walkers. But then he gets kidnapped by cannibals, and they don't know. So basically, they've chopped his leg off, and they're eating his leg in The Walking Dead. And all he does is sit there and go, "Ha ha, tainted meat." So I'm sat there reading this comic, thinking, hearing Bob scream "tainted meat" in one hand, thinking about chemicals making the flesh bitter. The page that I don't understand of which the viewpoint is, and I think all of that combined meant that my enjoyment of this was hampered of what I've brought to it rather than it being a fault of it in itself. So that's what I would say was one of the reasons that it was one of my lesser favorites of the shorts.
I'd also just like to point out as well, talk about the artwork and that perspective. They go on about a fucking sandwich early on in the short. It don't look like a sandwich. It looks like either another donut or a bagel, and it annoyed the shit out of me.
It could be a bagel sandwich. I don't know. We have those here.
Is that how you would describe bagels? As a
I
sandwich?
mean, you can make a bagel sandwich. Like,
Yeah,
Well,
but is that not just a
but
bagel?
that's it. When it's
well,
left, there we
Well, no,
Aaron,
go.
this is the
that's a different character though, isn't
No,
it?
that's the guy who was yamming on it.
Okay.
He
Aaron,
rocked up
this is the
whinging
future.
about, oh, people can't do this and people can't do that, and he's like, ooh, and then he's dropped it, and she's like, oh, he's dead.
Okay. I still
Maybe in the
thought it looked more
future,
like a bagel.
bagels don't exist anymore, and everything is called a sandwich unless it's a donut.
I was
And
gonna say, because
who knows?
this looks like a burger.
yeah,
does.
it doesn't
Burgers
have
for
a hole in the
sandwiches.
middle. So like, a donut is pretty much a sweet, like a different kind of dough, I guess, used than a bagel.
You don't need to explain a donut.
Okay, yeah,
mate.
never
You don't need. Fucking
well, I don't know. You all
There are
have like
donuts. There are
English
donuts without
muffins
holes.
and muffins here, and they're different things. I don't know how you British
It's 'cause
people
I like to
categorize your pastries.
I like to send Adam reels and memes of people talking about the differences between American and British stuff. Because sometimes I come out with some crackers that he has no fucking idea what I'm talking about, and he's just right there going,
Well, we established an English muffin for us was a biscuit for you, right? I think.
Sort
I
of.
don't remember
No,
this.
it's more like It's a bit more like a dumpling, isn't it? Like you'd have stew and dumplings, the way in which they'd use like biscuits and gravy. It's a bit more like a dumpling in that sense, not like the Chinese dumplings. It's a bit more like that than it is a muffin, I think.
We're not going to get into this.
Okay.
We're not.
We'll save that one for
This is a
kinetic
different
memory.
thing.
Pastry.
So none of us
Yeah.
are donuts.
Anything else to say on morsel folk? Nope, I'm getting shaky heads. Greg, what was your pick for favorite comic? Well, favorite short, sorry.
Okay, well, this is gonna be interesting to see. Well, my favorite, which I'll explain, is Gear in the Machine by the writer Cody Ziegler. The artist is Claire Rowe, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and the colors are Jordi Belair. So, what did I like about that? Well, actually, first I should probably
Brief
summarize it.
summary. Brief summary.
Brief summary. Basically, you have page or two, Colonial Marines getting into a hive. They say, get this one, get this one. They take a few victims back for something. Next pages, we got a few scientists who are doing the classical evil company thing, extracting the chest bursters out of poor victims. During that, we have this is a small kind of station, very, very cramped room. We have two scientists working on the operation. That's all there is. And they're having this brief dialogue between each other. One of them is going about, where do we get these people, trying to make some small talk there. The other person is basically just saying, do your job, don't think about it. There's some brief exchange about how the gear they have is a bit outdated. I hope that the gear we're using won't have any malfunctions, hint, hint. And basically, they get the first operation done, incinerate the poor body, and they say, let's finish this one more person and we can get an early ride home. When one of the scientists gets to the last person in cryostasis, they find, oh no, it seems that the gear malfunctioned and the cryostasis just kind of faltered without them noticing there, and the chest burster erupted and dug a hole into the cryo chamber and is somewhere loose. They panic. They say, "We gotta go." First, they were like, "Oh, let's fight it," but then immediately after, no, better to just leave. But of course, before they get to leave, we have the alien find them and take them out. Of course. And the last part being Will and Yutani gets the transmission of a need for rescue, and they're basically just like, oh, do we have all the data we need? We do. Okay, with that, we're not sending. Do you know how much it costs just for two people to send a bunch to save them? Yeah, and the kind of cynically, my favorite line there is, when we have the budget, we will send some people to reclaim the lost equipment there, but until then, nothing. Literally, who gives a damn? So, on paper, it's not really a remarkable story there. The reason it's my favorite is mostly for nostalgia reasons, in the sense that uh, the art, while they were doing the operation, it has quite a bit of Alien Resurrection vibes. Those first opening scenes when they're doing the operation with Ripley, I really like that. And also, again, for nostalgia reasons, when we see that panel of the poor bastard in the cryo freezer who got the malfunctioning one, and the hole that was dug out by the chest burster, it really reminded me of AVP 2010, when we have that first intro sequence for the alien that kind of escaped. I like scientific lab sequences where we have the aliens escaping. I find that all very fun. The art was nice and serviceable. I liked the dialogue between them, though at the same time there were some issues there. Um, I do agree with the scientist who was more in the sense of like, why are you talking about this now? But his colleague was just making small talk. She was obviously uh, never really remorseful for where they're getting those people from, more in the sense of just curiosity there. But I liked the kind of compactness of the story. It felt very complete, uh, little shot of how things in the universe there could work. I did not really like how the colonial marines at the start were kind of implied to be working for the company, which a lot of the shorts do have. But uh, again, other than that, I really liked the art of how the whole little scientific area was cramped. A lot of the gear was really well drawn, and like the shot with the chest burster when it was picked out again with that bloodied put into that vial really reminds me of that Alien Resurrection um, kind of vibe. Completely all original art assets. Aliens, everything was not reused from anything anywhere else. Liked the overall style there, and again, one of my highlights of that little story was that last line, which was just like, they're just two people there. We don't care. There's not enough budget. Why would we send all this, a whole security squad, FTL, just for that? There's no benefit there. So even though there's a bit of that kind of mustache twirling evil company thing that if it goes too far, I do not like. But in this sense, it was believable enough to me that I could get behind, and I found that kind of bittersweet thing more plausible than in some of the other stories, which were some were more fantastical with how things ended there. So this was overall, like from beginning to end, I found it as the most satisfying in that sense.
Adam, thoughts on Gear in the Machine?
Yeah, I liked this one. It was another one that played into the whole space capitalism thing where they're talking about, who we're glad we're gears in the machine rather than being ground up by it, right? But they didn't realize how easily those gears could just be replaced by the powers that be. So there is a nice little commentary there, I guess. The artistic style was uh, interesting. It was pretty stylized compared to the rest of the shorts, I would say. So yeah, overall, I think the artwork was solid. The story was a nice little commentary between these two characters, these scientists that are dissecting someone, and kind of Alien Resurrection like, as you said in that, Greg, where it feels like that scene from the start of that film. Yeah, overall, I thought this one was pretty good. The alien just escapes, and they even make a comment about the cryopods, like, "Hey, this isn't one of those cryopods that's prone to have issues, is it?" And sure enough, it was, and the host thought out there, and the alien chewed its way through the back of the cryopod. Um, the only thing I thought was a bit odd, where she was like, "Grab the pulse rifles." Actually, never mind. There's no time. Let's just go. Uh,
Yeah.
but overall, yeah, it was solid. I thought stylistically pretty strong.
Sarah?
Ready for me, my friend? Google. So look, I thought this story was fine.
Only fine.
It was fine. Everything Greg said about the echoes of Resurrection, I liked. I like Resurrection. It's fine. It's a good film. Sorry. Um, so for me, yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think that I think I'm right in saying that the last two that we've talked about. So we've talked about Morsel and we've talked about Gear in the Machine. Those are the only two stories I was just desperately checking that has got no green used at all. In look at Greg's face. No green. This one and Morsel. Yeah, there's only two. It's not even
Didn't
in
notice
there
it.
at all. Yeah. So I thought it was interesting. I was trying to find a parallel in my brain and racking it, but I really can't. So maybe it's just Those are the two that we've just happened to talk about. Interestingly, the ship that it is set on, so it is the Weyland-Yutani medical frigate Philoctetes. So turns out, in a play written by Socrates, this guy buddied up with Hercules and got his arrows and his bow after he set fire to his funeral pyre that he immolated himself and then became immortal. So he's wandering around with this bow and arrow, and then the Trojan War's going on, and the legend had it that only the bows and the arrows would swing the war in their favor. So he was one of the guys who hid in a little horse to turn around and then obviously to finish the siege and win the war. So I wasn't sure whether we could really turn around and say, with this being a medical frigate, it's kind of a Trojan horse, I guess. I mean, it's equipment malfunction that leads to the chest burst that actually happened, as opposed to it being something sneaky or intentional, I guess. But I thought that perhaps was a parallel that could be made. Um, so yeah, look, I enjoyed it. It was all right. I really liked the panel when the alien sneaks up behind them. It's kind of jumping and the tail's coming through. I really liked that. I thought it was kind of perfect to finish on. So yeah, it was fine. It wasn't wow, but at the same time, it also wasn't a donut, so I can't complain.
So I'm quite more inclined to agree with Greg in this being one of the stronger ones. I think it stands out a lot more than the others do visually. I found it very reminiscent of Mike Mignola, his style. Famous for, of course, Hellboy, and in Alien, he did Salvation. So heavy use of blacks, heavy stylized approach to it. The red is very striking as well. It's such a good color to accompany black and white as just a visual palette, because it really stands out and it really impacts you. Like when the chest burst is removed, like Greg was mentioning. Yes, it's echoes of Resurrection, but also as a visual, just the red of this very violent shape, this very violent birth, well, missed birth, should we say. It's just, it's like I said, I don't want to overuse the word, but it's like I said, it's striking, it's impactful, it makes itself known. I think, while I completely agree with Greg in that the idea that so many of the shorts in Black, White, and Blood lean on the idea that, well, the misconception, I suppose, that the Cloning Marines work for Weyland-Yutani, it is kind of annoying. But then again, does it actually ever? Yes, it does. It
Yeah,
does
some
say
of
a
them have
wonderful day in the core.
some of them have Wayland Utani tags on them too. It was interesting because there was another story with Colonial Marines that didn't give that impression. But I mean, I always kind of think of the lore that we got in Fireteam Elite, where before they became the UACM, they were pretty corrupt. So I can kind of headcanon it into that a bit, I guess.
But it is one of the misconceptions that can be frustrating to people. If they'd have just removed some lines, it wouldn't have been. So there's like a line on the very first page where it's like another wonderful day in the core, whereas on the final page, I think they talk about it just as security forces. I don't think they specifically say Marines. Yeah, they don't
Yep,
specifically say
security.
Marines. They just say security. So even if it's just them rocking up in M3 body armor with a Weyland-Yutani tag on it, if they'd have just removed the mention of the core, that would have been fine. But but that's an aside. Sorry. So I like this idea of there just being farms, and the security team gets sent in. They retrieve some hived up people. They take them back to this medical frigate.
Well, I'm not
And
even sure. Sorry, just I'm a little bit behind on the points you made. I was desperately flicking backwards and forwards to try and find it. I'm not sure that it's clear or it's like absolute that the Marines that are are there to collect the equipment, or the retrieval team, if that makes sense, because it says shut it down. Security teams don't go on trees. As soon as we've got the budget, we'll send a retrieval tree for the
well,
valuable equipment.
if you go back to the first page,
Yes.
there's bottom right, bottom left panel, good
Yeah,
vitals, take them, that one, and the girl, leave the
yeah.
rest. So
But
that's implied. And then with the conversation that happens between the scientists later, where they're going, do you ever wonder where they get these people from? It's
Yeah,
heavily implied that that's what's happening.
they showed us where they got them from. Just the character doesn't know that. We were basically just previewed how they do it.
So
That's where I'm.
I believe that to be heavily implied that that's what's happening, and I like that implication. But I think aside from the striking visuals, what I think stands out about this one is that back and forth. Yes, maybe it is a bit late in the process for them to be questioning the ethics of what they're doing. That's not to say people can't just grow a conscience at any time, but it is one of the few shorts I think that actually has some depth alongside Utopia in there, with them discussing their place within, the machine, um, the ethics of what they're doing, and how they would actually rather be a cog in the evil and not get ground down by it, only to have it turned around and they do get ground down by the industrial complex, the medical and military complex that they were serving to avoid said fate. So it's a nice little irony, a very intentional irony, and I think it's one of the few that has that kind of depth to it. So that is one of the reasons I think it's actually quite one of the stronger ones. There are multiple panels in this one that I do think would look nice on my wall. So that's one of the measures I use for how much I like artwork in a run. Would I like it up on my wall? And there are numerous panels in this. I think Sarah, you called out the last the last page, that last spread of the aliens, the alien, sorry, coming across the mall and spearing somebody with the tail. That's a wonderful page. There's another page earlier of the guy chest bursted in the cryo tube, which looks fantastic, and even just that establishing shot of the cryo tubes of the medical facility further on in the background. I think that's wonderful. I'd actually quite love to get some of the original artwork from this to hang up. So yeah, definitely one of my favorites from within Black, White, and Blood. Anybody else have anything to say on this one? No? Okay. Adam, please tell us your pick for least favorite.
So for me, my least favorite was First Day. And in this story, we just kind of get thrown into this chaotic scene on a space station. No real setup or anything. We just have this Marine and her commanding officer that are trying to get somewhere. They come across a hive, and there's people that are hived up. The Marine says we have to help them. I mean, the only real setup we get is that her commanding officer is like, "Oh, I'm about to retire. We don't have time for this." And so she wants to help these people out. He doesn't. He gets aggressive. And then this queen descends from above and is about to kill him. He demands that his Marine help him. And she kind of turns back around like, sorry, that's not in my orders or whatever. That's not my objective, I guess, is what she says. And then the queen takes him out and it just kind of ends. So to me, it was just kind of, there wasn't really anything to this. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, that happened. The end. I thought we didn't even really see too much of the aliens. Honestly, it was just kind of commotion, disagreement, end. I'm like, whoa, okay. Like it just to me, it didn't really do anything for me, unfortunately.
So this was also my pick for least favorite, and that was a change that I made during the prep for today. I was rereading them for another time before we recorded today. Originally, I'd picked The Hunt, and as reading through this, I was like, actually, The Hunt's not that bad. It's okay, but it's not bad. I think First Day is the closest any of the shorts come to being just genuinely bad. There's one moment in it that I think saves it from. Well, saves it would be a wrong term. There is one moment in it where I find some value. Otherwise, I could have done without this. I'm not gonna lie. So, First Date was written by Stephanie Williams, who is the only double-dipped writer in this anthology, as far as I could tell. She also wrote The Hunt, and it was illustrated by Jethro Morales. And I absolutely fucking hated the artwork in this. The aliens looked like caricatures, and I did not like their depiction. I thought the armor looked good. I thought the Clone and Marine armor looked good, but like the way the main girl, not girl, sorry, the main Marine holds her flamethrower looked ridiculous. It looks so comical.
It reminds me of, in Predator, when the guy has got the like
The
Gatling.
minigun,
That's the
yeah.
guy. That's what it made me think of.
The only thing I liked in this was the tree of hived up people. That was literally it. So there's a panel of them in some sort of reptile house, I think it was called, and they just have a tree with a bunch of hived up people in it. And I like the concept more than the execution here, because the detailing on it, the eggs, it all looks quite swirly, it looks quite lazy, it's undetailed. The green looks boring. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, this is pretty much the closest the book gets to genuine bad. I have nothing more to say on it. Sarah, what did you think?
So yeah, the story made no sense. Why he wouldn't be her objective doesn't make any sense. Um, for me, I agree with everything that everyone said. The panel that I liked, that I didn't catch it on first read through because I think I was too busy rolling my eyes out of my head to pay attention properly. But I liked the one where Jackson, so it's the first Marine, gets got. So it's this one. And he's got hold of the inner jaws of the alien trying to stop it while it's got hold of him by the head and he's ripping his arm off. Um, and I actually, and its tail is also impaling him at the same time. I'm like, this dude is getting done, son. And he's just clinging onto these inner jaws and he has blood coming out of his mouth. And it's super gross, but at the same time, it is overkill. I feel as though quite a lot of the panels of this were like really extra, and whereas I think that with Siostra, with that grandiose wording is in theme of where you watch, films and how they show Soviet Russia, and when it was the USSR and the big grandiose speeches and the language and everything else, it kind of reflected that. Here, I feel as though it's like the adrenaline in most of them is like dialed up to the max. It's not one thing happening, it's 25 things happening at the same time. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing because of what you'd all said about the artwork, but that one I liked. I hadn't put together the fact that, of course, it's in a reptile house, so maybe the eggs would look different, like jellyish, like when snakes lay eggs or anything, or when they're all jelly in the first place. So maybe that's why. The main commander, shouty guy, his scar just seems to constantly change. I don't understand. One minute it's here, the next minute it's straight, then it's all jagged. I'm like, I've got no clue what's happening with his face. And in truth, I didn't really care. So, yeah, not my favorite, apart from when he's getting the life choked out of him and his eyeballs are coming out. It's probably the most gruesome. And I think if I was going to say the one thing that kind of made me chuckle a bit was that level of grossness. It's probably the only thing. I think that's what makes it unique from the rest of them. I'm not going to say that's a good thing, but it made me smile because it was just that dialed up to 11.
Greg, thoughts on First Day?
I'm going to agree with Sarah about that panel with the alien getting that poor marine. I I honestly I like my aliens being violent and gory when appropriate and needed. I'm one of the few people who don't really find problems with AVP Requiem's gore in that sense. I have no problem with it, and for aliens, I even like seeing their viciousness in that way. That so I agree with Sarah that that was a nice panel, but I know we have a few pages there, but that was one that I think needed to be larger, needed to maybe be a full page or half a page, not just a little slit there. Since, as Sarah said, a lot of things are happening with that uh, evisceration of that poor marine. So more space would have been nice to see that in full detail when you're already cramming so much in there. But I do agree that yeah, the art style isn't the strongest with this one, but I do like those aliens. They do remind me of the Kenner gorilla type, especially with the NECA revision. Uh, and yeah, it is implied there when the Colonial Marine says where are all the animals, it is implied that yeah, they are animal hybrids, which again, I like having our animal hybrids. If you're gonna try with different shapes, do it like that. So that's a big plus for me there. I yeah, the designs they do verge on being a bit ridiculous and caricaturish, but at the same time, since they looked similar to the gorilla aliens that I have literally on my shelf, it was kind of fun there. I also agree with Aaron there that one of the best panels is the tree hive thing. That's interesting, but yeah, the eggs with the color just splashed on in dots like that, that looks very strange. So that is one of the things that yeah put me off there, and it was just a hectic kind of story with no real sense. Yes, the station or whatever is overrun. They're trying to escape. She asks, "Should we save him?" No, our objective is to run away. So when he asks for help at the end, she is like throwing it back at him. No, you said we don't need your help. So that's not my objective, just to run away. But the way it's cut, like to be continued, basically, with the queen there. It is the one with almost the most abrupt cut. Again, it's the shortest story, so I understand that there. It is a missed opportunity there. So I said not a lot happens there. Chaotic, uh, not completely horrible, uh, but yeah, that is also it would have been it was close to me for my worst pick as well. Well, and if we're going to go by quality wise, yeah, probably there. I picked again Morsel more for the strangeness and how much impression that donut left in me, how hilarious yet annoying it was. But if we're going to go maybe by the least good or the most bland or whatever, yeah, that was very close to my uh, pick there as well. So I fully agree there.
Okay, we're in the home stretch, folk. This is the last one for us to discuss, and it is my pick for favourite. I went for Mother, the final short within the Black, White, and Blood series. It was written by, to my surprise, not Ryan Caddy, but rather Pornsack. Oh, good lord. Pornsack Pichetot. I'm so sorry, Pornsack, for this. It was illustrated and coloured by Partha Pratim. So it is a sequel, in as much as the web is a sequel to AVP. It is a sequel to Maternal Instincts, in that it follows the daughter of Joshua, the survivor from Maternal Instinct, where we find her aboard a research and manufacturing vessel that was ran by her father and his wife, where they create faces for androids. An alien infestation somehow broke out once again on this vessel, which was also named. Sarah, how did you pronounce it? The ship from Maternal Instincts.
Abhatak.
Okay.
And it's probably because it's Irish. It's like probably some salivary, spitty tack. But I wasn't even going to try it.
Fair enough. So they named it the new that, and also it was based on the design of the ship from the first comic as well. But yes, an alien infestation has broken out on board somehow. A distress call has gone out, and a group of cloner marines respond to save the life of Joshua's daughter. But it turns out it was all a trap, and she traps the marines on board, and they are massacred by the aliens. Because as this poor neglected child, under the tutelage of the ship's AI, a more updated model to the 8500. What was this? Was this the 9500? I think it was. She was educated on anything she wanted to, and where her parents were obsessed with beauty in creating, beautiful android faces. I can't remember her name. Was it Maroki? Something like that. Sorry, got to check this. Mariko. She became to realize that mankind was ugly, and that the beauty was in stamping out the ugliness of mankind. So I very much enjoyed this one. It started off with quite a strength in terms of Greg, Sarah, you must have appreciated this. The face just floating around in zero gravity as I forget the Doctor Who characters. Doesn't it end up being Cassandra?
Yeah, it's her. Yeah.
Who you meet later on in the show. I don't fucking know. I only casually watched a bunch of Doctor Who, but I immediately thought of that face that was stretched out across the frame that was in. Was it in Eccleston's second episode?
No, I think it was a bit further on, but I think it was like the New Earth ones. So
it was one of the early Eccleston
she comes
ones
back later for Tennant,
where he goes and shows Rose the last day of Earth or something, if I remember rightly. But I immediately thought of that. But I also thought it was an absolutely terrifying image of just this face just floating around in zero gravity. I liked that it felt resonant with Utopia as well as a way to bookend the entire series. Like we said earlier, Utopia is about humanity failing to meet its ideologies, and Mother was about a character coming to the realization that mankind was just ugly, through her tutelage of war. And there was a line in it that I very much liked where it was like, every time mankind gets the opportunity to be better, where is it? Because every time the human race can taste the chance to be more, it always elects to be less, to disappoint, to destroy. And understanding beauty means protecting it, because any chance to eradicate humanity's ugliness is beautiful. I fucking love that. You know me, I'm a depressive person. I don't believe much in our abilities to be good people, because it's demonstrated to us on a daily basis that is fucking impossible for the majority of us. So I thought that was very much on brand with the message or the themes that had been going off through the bulk of the comic. And it was a nice Alien 3 nihilistic way to end what I think is one of Marvel's strongest shorts. I thought it was a very nice visual style. It had a little bit of an anime flair to it, just a little bit, enough to... it kind of reminded me more of Big Hero 6 in its art style, but that still had a Japanese flair to it anyway. That was supposed to be an anime, Disney's anime-ish kind of superhero thing. So I quite like that style. There wasn't a great deal of the alien in it, but it didn't bother me so much in the end, because I just found myself enjoying what we got of the Marine, the artwork that we got of the Marines and the message that we got throughout it. And it was one of the shorter ones as well. but I still found it super satisfying. I love that last panel of that last page, sorry, of the Marines being massacred, and that very sort of grim half smile of the character as we come to the revelation, and then her sending out another distress call to lure some other ugly humans in for purification. Adam, you're the hopeful amongst us. Thoughts on Mother?
Don't raise your kids with iPads, folks. They'll turn into nihilistic, edgy teens that want to see humanity destroyed, I guess. But no, I thought this was pretty solid. It's funny because it kind of reminded me of that 40th anniversary short Alone, which I know was your favorite, Aaron, of those shorts. Um, so yeah, just the fact of this youngster who has these aliens on the ship, but has survived after her parents have been killed, and just wants to lure people in to be killed by the aliens. Like that is a different premise, and that's interesting. Like, how has she survived this long just by herself on the ship full of aliens? So yeah, stylistically, I thought the artwork was fine. That was one of my first thoughts as well, Aaron. Is like, oh, this is almost kind of manga like, maybe not quite there, but kind of leaning in that direction. But yeah, overall, I'd say it was a pretty solid one, pretty grim one to end on, certainly. But yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it.
Greg?
Okay, so this comic, is it edgy? Yes. Do I like edgy things? Yes. Um, it was. I agree with both Aaron and Adam there that this is one of the better ones. Uh, I do not find it faultless completely, but again, I am. I was very intrigued with the premise. First, it's an interesting thing to have in an anthology series for comics, to have one of the stories that continues uh, from the previous one is an interesting idea. And at the same time, so even though this is a continuation, this is the complete opposite in tone. Whereas the first one was hopeful, and the mother AI there protected the child so we can have a better future, etc. It was a hopeful one of triumph. This one was, like Adam said, this is what happens when you raise your kids with iPads and neglect them, etc. But basically, this is what happens when you get a traumatized child with that had a tough bringing up, and probably if we look at how the parents died as well, probably just broke something in her, so we get these psychopathic tendencies. But I do like how you have this continuation, which is a complete shift in opposites, which is completely normal for the Alien franchise, let's not lie. Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, etc. So we are all accustomed to those tonal shifts. I really did like that. And as a premise in itself, it has a lot of potential as a basic idea. What if you have this psychopath who, as said, lures people in with the distress signal to basically uh, get whoever comes and get him off, kill him, which can be done for either psychopathic androids, can be done for people with some issues, but also cultists. There are a lot of type of stories and adventures that can be told in such a setting. So I did think that's a pretty interesting thing. Yes, the whole nihilistic approach there, again, for a child that's only been raised by that mother AI there, and they obviously that child had a specific interest there that was getting deepened and deepened. But I first did also kind of question how did the kid survive so long? But then I do remember, I think it was mentioned somewhere there that the father who survived thanks to his mother unit, he basically made so that this mother AI will also do whatever it can to protect. So it's probably going
That
on
was
it.
a
Yeah.
nice follow through from the original. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really interesting that basically this child has full control and can order around and know that the mother system will close doors and the life systems control everything just to protect this child, and she has full reign with this. It's a it's a strange story that I wouldn't that I never thought imagine that something we would see something like that, but fits in perfectly well. So I was pretty happy to see it end on that kind of note. So the whole anthology ends with Alien being something that's kind of edgy, kind of depressive, kind of dark in that sense. You have to be pretty careful in the vast darkness of space. Uh, who are you approaching? Which it's interesting with the first story in Utopia and with this final story in the anthology. Trouble arises when people just try to do the right thing and rescue somebody who is in distress. So it really speaks to how dangerous being in space is, and who is that you're uh, answering that call to. I really like that theme being explored in this anthology, and I hope for it to be explored even more in future comics. It harpers on our basic human nature, our fear of when people were traveling on the seas before these past few centuries, where there was a bit more order, at least until now, when you didn't know, is that ship, does it need help, are there pirates, etc. There's so much fear in that vast unknowable landscape where there are not refuges where you can be completely sure and safe. So I think that is something that is a very good angle to be explored in the Alien franchise in the future. So I'm just so glad to have all of these varied stories. So I was really happy with what they chose to end on there.
And it's another through line from Utopia as well. All the problems came from helping a ship in distress. Sarah, take us home. Thoughts on Mother?
Yes, no Google helper on this one. You'll be glad to know I did not end up going down any. I zero gravity, acid blood floating around, terrifying faces. Loved it. It's already onto a winner. I'm an unapologetic Alien 3 fan. So within that sphere, hopelessness and impending doom is my happy place. So for me, this was excellent. I agree with everything everyone said with the parallels. Um, I think there's a couple of them. I thought the alien looked really cool. There's one that kind of like is and I'm not saying it's a like for like, but when I saw it, it kind of made me feel it feels like Blade Runner, and it's that one. Sorry, the lighting is terrible. In the rain, it's with it falling down, it's very stylized. That was one of my favorite panels in there. But honestly, this is terrifying. And what I thought was interesting is that there was one of there's a way in which this is an opposite that I thought was really, really interesting while we were reading Utopia as well. So it talks about how she was alone and Mother was designed to prioritize the safety and needs above all else, including guiding the education. Now, on the next page, it turns around and it says, I tailored her education to those needs, providing whatever she desired of humanity's history. So, whereas Siostra was very much I'm a facilitator, I see what's going on, I run the numbers, I do this, that, and the other. This is that Miko is searching out the tragedies and that they talk about ethnic cleansings, they talk about revolutions and coups, and they show a pirate. Maybe that's a little echo back as well to one of the Ryons in Utopia, and death and bones that looks like something out of Terminator, of just bones and skulls, kind of piled on top of each other. So this is a child who has got a computer that can show her anything that she wants, and she chooses to look at all of the worst side of human history. And I thought that was an interesting parallel because Utopia is people with big ideals of how they're going to do it right and how they're going to build something new. And it's hopeful, even though it ends up being that the aliens have found their utopia, whereas this is just a bomber all the way through. I'm luring people in, and the only things that she's focused on is how ugly the human race is, as opposed to how beautiful it could be. And I liked it. I liked that it was very sad. One of the last panels, I think, was like, again, I do like it when they're all horrible, but she's kinda in the doorway, and they're all piled up and stabbed and tails coming out, and, this looks like a melting yeah. But I thought that was an interesting opposite to what we were experiencing through Utopia. This is a great story. I love the artwork. It was, again, well written, really short, really sharp, really to the point, unlike my commentary on it. So yeah, no, this was for me. If Erin, if you hadn't have chosen this, I'd have chosen it. I'm very happy with Maternal Instinct being my favorite, but if you hadn't have gone for this, this would have been my number one.
I'm glad we each picked the other side of it though. What with them being the little sequels, but no, that I believe is everything. Unless anybody else has anything they want to mention about anything to do with the series.
I have a quick honorable mention, and that is Lucky. For me, my favorite was between Morsel and Lucky. And I feel like Lucky, to me, had some of the strongest artwork in all of the shorts. It had the best portrayal of the xenomorphs, in my opinion. I thought they were the most interesting in that short. Uh, Again, pretty straightforward. We're just following a dog as it tries to escape some xenomorphs. But overall, I thought that was another really solid one, and that was probably my runner-up.
I enjoyed that one. I enjoyed I forget what it was called, Heartbreak or something. The other short in the final issue. You know, apart from First Day, I really enjoyed everything in this series, and it all had a lot of value to it. I do really think it is probably Marvel's best series so far. I'd say more so than maybe Thor and Descendant, if only because of the variety of stuff that's in there as well. It just edges it out a little bit for me.
What was the one with the androids, the synthetic people, the warrior ones that bopped
Icarus.
off? Icarus. I
Icarus.
think Icarus might be. I reread it the other day, and I don't think I appreciate it so much more the second time round. I think that might still be my favorite, with my guilty pleasure of What If.
Okay.
But
I think I'd go 8 or 9 out of 10, maybe 8.5 out of 10 for this. Numbers from other folk.
I might be a little lower. I might be a 7.5, maybe.
Okay. Sarah?
I'm going to go with a 9. I think Utopia, Maternal Instinct, and Mother Alone means it deserves a 9. And I think some of the artwork splashes in the other ones, the honorable mention with Lucky and how that I honestly, I don't think there's a lot that detracts from it. One bad story of Morsel and donuts does not make a terrible run in completeness. So I would go a 9. I think this is incredibly strong.
Greg?
I would I would go between 8 and 8.5. It probably would be. I would need to reassess how I count the best of the best from the previous years. But yeah, I highly, highly, highly rate it. I want to see more anthologies. I want them to do a Black, White, and Blood. Yes,
For
for
Predator would be
the
nice.
Predator.
Yeah.
For Predator, certainly. One day, do that with AVP as well. Continue
Mm-hmm.
with Alien. Generally, I love anthologies, but anthologies work so well with the comics. I think this is the first comic anthology series that I've read, and I adore the idea. Again, it's not all of the stories are the best, and certainly better ones probably exist that I haven't just read, but I am in love with the idea of it, and I am very, very glad that, in my opinion, overall, the Marvel entries with Alien in particular have just been getting better and better. Of course, not
Definitely.
linearly. little maybe ups and downs and etc. But on a whole level, things are getting better and better, and we're getting more and more variety in that sense, different kinds of stories. So I'm more and more I'm not so worried as most of the fandom were in the beginning. How will Marvel treat the properties, etc.? I think it's getting better and better, and the trajectory suggests that things are in good hands. If they continue like this, I think it'll be okay. I mean, I've started reading Paradiso as well, and I'm really enjoying that. The first issue, I need to read the second one as well. But uh, I'm really happy with the Alien comics. With the Predator ones, I'm also generally happy. I need to read the crossovers there as well, but I've heard really good things. So I'm glad we're getting a lot of different stuff. We're getting them relatively frequently, and so I think that that comic side has a bright future there. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Definitely. I do think Marvel's got better, thankfully. And it all seems to be under the stewardship of the current editor, Sarah something. She edited this. She took over from the final 2 issues of Revival, and that is, I do think the worst of Marvel was the first 2 runs, and it has been better. That's not to say it's all been hits. The Romulus thing was a bit of a poo, a bit of a dud. And I'm not totally sold on Paradiso at the minute, but I don't want to sway any opinions there. But I hope all the listeners and the watchers have enjoyed this episode. Be sure to let us know how you think about the series. Let us know your picks for favorites, your least favorites down in the comments below, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Facebook or the forums. Let us know. As always, you can reach out to us at podcast@avpgalaxy.net as well if you want to reach out to any of us here. If you are listening to this as a podcast on any of the normal, podcast platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, please do leave us reviews. As a show, it helps our visibility, it helps our ratings and all that kind of bullshit that we unfortunately have to give a shit about, even though we'd rather not. But it does, and the same applies to YouTube. Please do like the videos or dislike them if you think we're a bunch of muppets and you don't like what we're saying. Interaction helps. Drop us a comment down below as well. All that to help the algorithms, help us viewable. I find it boring to go over, but we need to say it. Adam, do you want to do the fun whoring?
Sure. Well, you can always catch us on our main hub of activity, which is our website, avpgalaxy.net, where we have all the latest news on the franchises. We have reviews, interviews, editorials, and of course, you can find this podcast there as well. We're on all the major social channels: Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads, and now Blue Sky. So be sure to check us out there if you prefer. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to support what we do at AVP Galaxy, check out patreon.com/AVP Galaxy.
Greg, is there anything you'd like to promote in regards to the website that you have taken over the handling of?
Oh, well, so we
Although
have
don't get
revised.
specific with dates because this is going to come out
Exactly,
after the
exactly.
next one.
Understood. But we have tried to. We are reviving the monthly game nights. So from 2025, we are having each month the community game events that we shall be scheduling. If you are interested in joining us, you can find information about that either on AVP Galaxy, our forums there, or on Discord. They will be done generally on Saturdays, nearing the end of each month, where we shall be cycling through the good old games on PC multiplayer, where we shall be playing Aliens Colonial Marines, AVP 2010, AVP 2, AVP Classic, etc. If you want to join us, we shall be glad to have you on there.
and this is PC only, just FYI,
Yes.
because that is where we still have the most players in these sorts of multiplayer games. So hopefully we get a new game that has more than a few players in asymmetrical multiplayer or something, because it has been a while. So, but yes, we like to keep the gaming EVP and alien scene alive. So come join us for those game nights.
Indeed. And thank you to Greg for taking over that scheduling, because we got shit at it last year. Anyway,
Glad to help.
you can follow me on Twitter and Blue Skies. On Twitter, I am _Corporal Hicks. On Twitter, I am just Corporal Hicks. Adam?
And if you'd like to follow me personally, it's RidgeTop21 on Instagram and Twitter, or just RidgeTop on Blue Sky.
Sarah, I know you're on both. Do you want to shout out yourself, or do you want to be a recluse?
Honestly, I'm dull as dishwater, but if you see me, Sarah Lynn, on the forums, then say hi on maybe P Galaxy.
Okay. Greg, we don't bother with you, do we?
Not much. Generally, where you can. I'm on AVP Galaxy, on Discord, Steam, as Still Collating. Through there, you can gladly have interactions with me.
I was going to say, you're on Discord a lot, so we should probably promote that a bit more. We do have a
Yes.
Discord server if you'd like to chat with fellow fans there. And we also have a Steam group. So we'll be looking to give maybe those two places some much needed love this year and some upgrades.
Well, thank you everybody for listening or watching. This has been Corporal Hicks.
RidgeTop.
Still Collating.
And Sarah.
Signing off.